Headliner Radio, the creative voice.
Well, welcome everybody to this episode of Headliner Radio. This is a podcast with freelancers in the live events sector. Hi guys, how are we all?
Hey.
Good
Hello.
stuff. Good stuff. I guess before we start, best way to do this is to introduce each other, introduce yourselves. We're probably all seeing each other in different parts of the screen, but we'll start with you, John.
Oh, hi. My name's John Rogers. I'm a freelance lighting designer. I live in London. Like a lot of people on this call and a lot of my colleagues and mates and stuff, in the same sort of boat, in the same sort of sea with that. It's like I say, been in London for 10 years. Been in lighting in some form for about 16, I think, at last count. That's me.
And Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Davis. I am a freelance audio engineer. I worked for AdLib for 5 years, and I've been freelance for the last 9 years. I live in Liverpool. And all my work stopped.
Yeah,
Same as
great.
everybody here, probably.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Scotty?
I'm Scotty. I'm a freelance rigger. Moved to the UK nearly 17 years ago. I'm based in London. And, I've been doing live events since I was in high school.
Okay. And Frank, finally.
Hi, I'm a freelance live sound engineer, been in the industry for just over 23 years now. I'm also a part-time project manager with Wigwam, which I'm doing alongside my freelance work. And as it is for everyone else, everything stopped in March.
Yeah, been a pretty mental 4 or 5 months. God, we're in August already, aren't we? Who'd like to kick us off then, really? We want to highlight the threat of the sector because there's no events allowing any mass audience. Work may not arrive, and for all of you guys, I hope it's quicker, but realistically, potentially spring next year. And some people would even say that's us being optimistic. Frank, why don't you kick us off and just say, how have you found this last 3 months from a headspace point of view as well? Because I think that's something we should address. And how have you been getting through this?
Yeah, it's because it is kind of terrifying, really, because everything just stopped abruptly. And we all know we're going to be the last thing to go back. And we all appreciate that. We understand. But it's terrifying because we're falling through a lot of cracks. So in that aspect, it's very frightening. From my point of view, I've been trying to keep as healthy as possible and doing lots of walking with my dog, trying to spend a lot of time with the family that I wouldn't normally get to try and keep positive. But the reality is we're suddenly adapting to living off a lot less money because we are falling through cracks. I know there's the furlough scheme. I know there's grants for self-employed, but there's so many people that don't fit that criteria. And that's just terrifying when we spent our lives paying taxes, working, doing skilled jobs. Yeah. And it's the being forgotten about bit. And I think that's the bit that's frightening. We need a plan. And for me, that's the scariest thing, is not seeing a plan to get us through this in the long term. It's very frightening in that sense.
Yeah. And Laura, I see you nodding along a bit there. I mean, you can relate to that fully, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excluded because I'm a limited company, so I'm not getting my usual wage, not even 50% of it. And I've got so many friends who are earning over the threshold as well, so they're not getting a penny, they're not getting any help at all, which just seems so unfair when they pay so much in taxes. It's just
is that
bad.
the same with both you guys? Or, I mean, is it identical? I guess.
No, I'd actually say that certainly within the context of this call, I'm probably one of the lucky ones in that I qualified for the self-employed income support scheme because I had 3 years good tax returns as a sole trader. But even with qualifying for that, what that is does not cover my rent and bills. In that it's 80% of your profits, which is to say, obviously, if you're a self-employed person and you do something like buy a car for business purposes and pay the insurance, you write that off against tax, you pay those bills. And then after that, what is left is your profit. So 80% of what was left after I paid for all the stuff is what I have to now pay for all the stuff with. And that grant is taxable as well. So I'm looking forward to paying tax on that grant. That's going to be an absolute hoot.
Yeah, I can imagine. Scott, you're nodding along there. Is this a similar situation for you as well, financially?
I'm a limited company as well. So qualify for the furlough scheme, but it's based on your official salary, not on your actual earnings. So I'm earning about a fifth of what I would normally earn.
Right.
And that's only until that's decreasing now for the next couple of months as they phase out the scheme.
Yeah.
There's always a point around this as well that I think that bears repeating, is that the perception is that everybody who's a limited company who's paying themselves a wage out of this is they're paying themselves the smallest amount possible in order to dodge tax, and therefore and it's just not the case. In Scotty's case, in everybody's case on this call, I know I can't speak for them, but from what I've seen, you go limited to protect something like your house and your personal assets from your business. If you have 4 bad months, if you break your leg and you can't tour, you don't want your house to be in the balance. So you insulate your family and your home life and your home finances from your business finances. And that means, you might pay yourself very little wages over a certain period of time because your business hasn't been doing well. But you're at least, the home fires are burning and everything's okay. So that's the financially responsible thing to do that people's accountants urge them to do. And in a way, there's a lot of this across the board. People are being penalised for paying in, being responsible, doing the right thing, paying the tax, and it's like the honesty and the diligence of running a business yourself is just being penalised. It's a really
I was just going to say, I'm sure most of us know these people that are dipping into the savings now. They've paid taxes, they've worked hard, they're skilled at what they do, and they're penalised for earning more money. But if you're employed by if you're an employee by a company earning the same money, you'll be on a furlough system, and that's just not fair. That's just completely not fair. I know people that are, as we all do, going into savings, and they're going, I've worked hard all my life, and as you guys, I'm limited. Same thing. I pay, whether I'm self-employed or limited, I'll pay the same tax either way.
Yeah.
But I'm worse off now. I would have been probably better off being self-employed, and I'm not. I'm worse.
Yeah,
off.
ironically,
I've paid exactly the same tax. So there's no. We just want it to be fair. I think that's the problem. Yeah. It doesn't seem very fair, the system.
And you mentioned skilled. That's the big buzzword here. Immense skills. A lot of people that don't understand what you guys and girls do, I should say, behind the scenes. It frustrates me because I, after going to so many concerts and events all my life and working on so many, the amount of work and the amount of skill that it takes, the time it takes to learn the skills you guys have got, is you just can't put a price on that, really, can you? And now there's just not, I'm laughing nervously because I don't see where there's an end here in the short term. So, because obviously the $1.5 billion came, and that's great, but it went on a lot of legacy venues, a lot of whatever else. Yeah, I think there's something like 6,000 small venues in the UK, and maybe 200 million would have been about right for that, and 2 went to that. So if we think of that as the potential proportion that's actually going across the board, then we're a bit screwed, aren't we?
Mm. And it's also, I think the thing is like, the bailouts that are being offered, our industry's falling through that for some reason. We're not getting, it's great, like you said, with the theatres and all the heritage, they're getting saved, but they're charities and there's lottery money. And we're literally, when manufacturers, when distributors, when suppliers are going to fall through the gap, there's going to be no one to put anything in those venues. And that's the bit that's a worry, is like they're missing. And also, it's like you said, I think that's a good point. People don't really know what we do.
Yeah.
I think people seriously go to an arena and go, it's the same system that was in there for whatever show I saw the other week. They don't know. The whole thing someone summed it up really well. We go in, we build a small city and we take it out again and somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And I think it's about educating people and educating the politicians, because they just see the theatres and those shows. I don't think, I think it's a lack of understanding, and it's lazy on their part not to want to find out more, because we're such a massive contributor to the economy as well. It's like we support restaurants, travel, hotels. Thousands of people come to shows. What do they do when they're in those cities?
And you're right. You're sorry, please carry on, Frank.
Yeah. Oh no, sorry. It was just like I said. I think it's about educating people.
Yeah.
We are frustrated and upset and angry, but we need to start educating where the gaps are and letting the people know what we do.
Yes.
Like you said, we're in the shadows normally.
Yes, completely. And just to, for listeners here, 600,000 people directly affected in the UK, approximately. Realistically, that's more like 2 million with families and everything else. It's the supply chain, you're right. It's highly skilled technicians and workers in an industry that so many people rely on, whether it's directly or whether it's for a release, whether it's to de-stress, and I think something that we also have to look at is the mental strength, that gets tested during these times, because it's a passion industry too, isn't it? It's an industry full of passionate people, mostly music lovers. I'm sure you all get a bit sick of the same music maybe now and again, naming no bands or whatever else, or the same, I get it can get a little laborious, but things could be a lot worse when you're in your day-to-day, couldn't they? I mean, with you, Scotty, you came over from Australia?
No, I came over from New Zealand.
New Zealand, God, I'm sorry. I do apologise.
My company, my limited company, is called Kiwi Love Limited.
I should have noticed that on the...
And I love our industry.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm not going to call it something boring. This is a fun industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? We do it because we enjoy it.
Yes, yeah. And you came, but what drove you here and what got you into this game, if you like, and what brought you to the UK?
I started working on shows in high school, on high school stuff, then started helping my older sister's friends on the university shows. So by the time I finished school, I got employed.
Yeah.
And then my choices were go to university then, and I couldn't decide what to study, or I had some opportunities to go to America and come to the UK. And so I wound up in London at 20 with a UK passport and planned on staying for 6 weeks. And 2 degrees and a mortgage later, I'm still here 17 years later.
Wow. 2 degrees? What were they in?
I've got a Bachelor's of Engineering and a Master's degree in Theatre Lighting Design.
Wow, incredible. Wow.
And I wound up here because New Zealand has a fairly healthy entertainment industry for the size of the country, but it's still 5 million people at the bottom of the world, as opposed to one of the biggest industries in the world. Because I lived here, I got to tour the world for some of the biggest rock and roll bands in the world, and then I've worked on big West End shows. The depth of the industry here is just so much bigger, and I am now having to look at if the industry here isn't going to support me or reopen. The New Zealand response to coronavirus has been very, very different.
Yes,
and although the industry there is a lot smaller, it's open already. Yeah. They have a stimulus package. Yeah. They financially supported people throughout the whole thing, and the industry there is opening up again. And I'm now having to wonder if I should uproot my life and up sticks and abandon everything I've worked for and move back home, just because even though it's a smaller industry, it's open.
Yeah. And
the government has supported it.
She's inspiring to watch. She really is, and to listen to, isn't she? Your Prime Minister. I think that is really quite heartbreaking to hear, to be honest, mate. Because you've come here on essentially a very skilled, but a labour of love still, because you're in an industry that you adore. And now it's a case of closing the doors on skilled workers coming in from different parts of the world, and that's very upsetting to hear. I mean, John, what's your take on where you feel industry wise and how safe you feel, and are you petrified about what's happening next? And you're in one of the better positions. When I say better, it really is with those speech marks, isn't it?
Well, I mean, in September, I'll be in the same position as everybody else.
Precisely.
The self-employed income support scheme ends this month, and furlough for those people who are salaried. And I think the statistic for those who are freelancing in our industry is about 72%. So most of us are freelancers or sole traders or limited, like not PAYE, that is to say. But, in terms of the support I'm getting, where we'll drop away from that to just universal credit next month, and I'll be in the same boat as basically everybody else.
Right.
I I keep talking about something I'm calling Mosh Pit Day, which is, the day when you can have a big room full of lots of sweaty people, shoulder to shoulder, hugging and singing. And when it is safe to do that, and when venues can open to on Mosh Pit Day. And the problem with Mosh Pit Day is nobody knows when it is, and nobody knows how to, and there is no clear plan from our government on how to get there. Miss Arden in New Zealand has she'll see her Mosh Pit Day way before us if she hasn't already.
Agreed.
And that's the problem. The fact is most venues can't run at social distancing. The Royal Albert Hall, if it did 1 meter social distancing, would fill 37.5% of its capacity. In order to break even for the hall, it needs to run at 60%. And in order for the promoter to put a show on and pay people and break even, that needs to run at 80% capacity. And that's the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah, this is stunning and staggering, I should say. And actually, I'll come to you here, Laura, because it was Andy Dock that said this on our last call when we had a chat, Andy being founder of Adlib. He said, and I get that it was 80% theatre. I knew that was roughly right. I had no idea, and you guys will probably nod along because you do know, I had no idea that something like an arena could be up to 90 because of potential. I mean, I guess you've got the artist fees, you've got, it all added up, and I thought, wow, that was something that I think we do need to say again, because that is unbelievable, isn't it? When, the average, punter, I mean, I'll include myself in that because I would never have guessed it was that high. So, yeah, it's a mad situation, Laura, isn't it?
Yeah, people don't realise how many crew members go into one show. There can be somewhere up to the region of 150 people just putting on one arena show, and all of those people are currently out of work. So, yeah, it needs to be viable for us to open back up, and at the moment it's just not.
And how did you get into this industry, Laura, as a matter of interest?
I started in the industry when I was 15 years old. Andy Dock actually offered me a job, and I started in Adlib. I actually wanted to be a lawyer, and decided this looks like a really cool, fun job, and it's a real industry. So I took the plunge, didn't do A-levels, didn't continue, didn't do any degrees or anything, and went straight into Adlib, worked there for 5 years, got my experience, and they taught me everything I know. And then, I've been freelance the last 9. So I've been in the industry for 14 years. And
I think that's amazing, and it's inspiring to hear that. And it doesn't surprise me at all that Andy Dock can convince anybody to come work in this industry from being a lawyer. Only a man like that can do that. But what's really great there, I think we should talk about a little bit, and we'll go to each of you for this. Again, that skill set you've developed, that you've been taught. I think it was Andy also that said, we wouldn't even let people on the consoles for a couple of years until they've learnt this, X, Y, Z, whatever it might be, surmising slightly, but you get the gist. It's essentially, was it an apprenticeship, did you say? But it felt like one, kind of.
Yeah, it was kind of an apprenticeship, but at the time it was just, I was given a job. So, it took me 4 years to get on my first tour. I was 19 when I did my very first tour.
Fantastic.
And that was just as a tech, that wasn't mixing or anything. And then I started working with Emily Sunday 2 years later when I went freelance.
Fantastic.
It's
it's a bit different.
You have to learn a lot of different things. You have to learn the console, you have to learn to tech, you'd be learning about PA, the speakers that go in the air for people who don't know. But there's so many different parts of the job that you can't just learn it overnight, really.
Exactly,
it's not something you can just walk into. It's something that takes a lot of time.
And it's something that only certain people even can get to a level. You're either made for that. It doesn't mean no one can learn, but you have to have the passion factor, don't you? And
to be away as well from home for such long periods of time, you have to be a special kind of person. We all love what we do, and that's why we miss weddings, funerals, friends, birthdays, whatever. We miss a lot of home life and stuff to do what we do. So to now be at home for such long periods of time, it's very difficult for a lot of people to adjust to that, I think, as well. Because they don't have that support network where other people will have a lot of friends around them. We lose that over time when we're away a lot. So to come back and be home for such a long period of time is quite difficult, really.
Yeah. Scotty, did you work on our London Eye as well?
I did a rigging job on there a few years ago. cleaning the cables.
Yep.
And they were
as mad as that sounds, that is a proper skilled job again, where you need to know exactly what you're doing. These are the things that people just wouldn't. That's why I brought it up, because it's a heritage piece of site now, and that is just even every little element like this that goes behind every scene, every job, every event job. It's much deeper than people would realise, isn't it? And there's also that level of, I guess, in your game with the rigging side of things, it's also the level of regulation you have to adhere to and be knowledgeable of.
Yeah, and not even so much the regulation. It's a stressful job.
Yeah.
You are working at height above people's heads every day, and if you drop stuff, you'll kill someone.
Yeah.
I remember talking to someone once about I forget what they were doing, but they were sort of really nervous that they might hurt someone, because this had never happened to them in their job, that they could hurt someone. And I was like, oh, but that's literally every day at work, is you are doing safety critical stuff. You are hanging things and working above people's heads. Everything you do is safety critical.
Yeah, that's the word.
And not in a small way, if I drop this spanner because I didn't tie it onto something, it will go through someone's hard hat and kill them.
Yeah, I mean, that really is the long and the short of it, isn't it? So that is a stress. I mean, Frank, going back to just like I mentioned to Laura, how you got into this, and was it a similar kind of virtual apprenticeship?
Yeah, definitely. I'm classically trained. So I'm classically trained in clarinet, and I was going to Leeds College of Music. Yeah. And my dad worked in OB with the BBC and outside broadcast for 30 years. So I used to go to all these, he was away a lot, but he used to take me to a lot of these, like, I was at the, I'm going to call it GMEX. It's not now, it's Central, whatever it's called. The gigs that we did there, things like that. And I didn't take my place to go and study. Similar thing to Laura. I was like, do you know what? I did work experience at the BBC when I was 16. So I did stuff with the BBC Philharmonic, radio plays, like Red Dwarf was being filmed, went and did some stuff on that. It was brilliant. I saw all aspects of what they, broadcast sound. And I just went, I don't want to be a musician. I want to get into, I love music, but I want to be working in it. And and then I started working at a studio in Prestwich, which is where I live now, a local studio. I was building stuff there, crewing with a small PA company in Bury, like driving a 7.5 tonner and doing really dodgy cover bands up and down the country. Then doing stuff going back to venues disappearing. All my apprenticeship was working with the Roadhouse, Night and Day Cafe, Hop and Grape in Manchester. Progressed onto touring then. I picked up my first tour from would have been the Roadhouse or somewhere. I did, oh my God, David Devont and his Spirit Wife, 6 weeks on a bus. I was 20.
Wow.
And it was like toilets we were doing. And you learn your craft. I did loads of Irish rock bands. So I was learning to mix really weird instrumentation. And then it just progressed. And, I worked with companies similar to Laura. I do a lot of tech work. But then it progressed and, I ended up touring with, I'm currently out with James Blakes, who I've been touring with. I work with Lily Allen, Hot Chip, The Streets for years. And it's come from loving it and just proper grassroots learning. And the stuff that I learned then is still important now. It's about doing your job properly, making it work. I always say we earn our money when things don't work properly and we have to pull it out the bag. Yeah. And that kind of background, I think, and I do think it's something that's in you as a person. Very similar to Laura, I didn't want to touch a mixing console at first because I thought I might not be able to mix. So I did want to learn how it all worked. And I think that's really important. I think that's another reason why it's really heartbreaking what's happening with us, because this is our life and it's a real skill set. And
it is. It really, really is. And I want to ask all of you where you would have been or what you would be doing. Just before, John, I want to just ask you again just about your journey. So everyone else has given us quite a different but interesting take on how it all happened. I mean, were you in bands and fell into this industry, or did you always want to get behind the kit?
I I came to it quite late, actually. I'm 37, and I started out in my early 20s in and around uni doing something completely different. And I, was always at the local gig venue, and I was writing for the student magazine, and I was helping run the radio station. And I was just like soaking up live music like a sponge. I just loved being at gigs. I still do. I love gigs so much. And I just stuck around until they sort of said, listen, if you're going to be hanging around here all the time, do you want to make yourself useful? And like, this is, pushed in front of a lighting desk by a lady, who tours around when she came through. And she said, I can't be bothered doing the support band. I want you to do the support band, and deep-ended me in front of her. And was like, don't black it out. So instead of like, very much the opposite route of it was ages before I touched the console, it was like shoved in front of a program console going, this does this, this does this, this does this. If you completely freak out, fade that up and walk away. Don't black the stage out. Try and keep up with the, feel the songs and stuff and have a go. And she sort of watched me for a few songs and went, oh, great. Yeah, you've got this. I'm going to have a cigarette. You might be good at this. And I loved it straight away. So I was like, hanging out with bands and getting the odd sort of tour and stuff like that. And then I got the offer of a job working for a lighting console manufacturer in London about 10 years ago. And that moved me down to London from Liverpool because whilst I was aware of AdLib, I didn't really know anybody there. And I didn't really sort of make it in the industry till I moved down to London, which was kind of weird. I did 3.5 years for them as technical support and, testing software for them and stuff.
Right.
And getting other people out of trouble when they rang me on the phone. So you get to learn a lot of theory. And then I decided to want to kind of fix my own problems and went freelance about 6.5 years ago, nearly 7 now, actually. Yeah. And got great support from the company that I left as well. They totally appreciated it. And I'm sure Laura will echo, Andy Doc probably championed her every step of the way when she went freelance. I was in the same position with the company that I worked for. They totally just sort of said, yeah, but that's great. Don't be a stranger. And, since then I've been, making my own mistakes, and the learning curve of being on gigs then and, was knowing all the console stuff and all the buttony stuff was great. And then being in a world where going, well, this cable's failed. I don't have another one. Now I need to Google the diagram to resolder the bit out on this cable and stuff. And stuff that you guys were, that Laura was doing when she was 15. I'm 23, and there's these there's people who've been in the industry for so long that you can learn so much from absolutely everybody that you work with, because they've all had really crazy different paths into the industry. And it's just, there's always so much to learn and so much to do and so much new stuff to play with. And it all comes back to, I get to go to gigs all the time. On my days off, I go to gigs, the venues I work in. What do you do with your spare time? On my birthday, I take lights down to my friend's cider festival. It's a tiny little farm that is like, they're not having it this year. Obviously, you get 500 people there. They've got pub bands on at the end of the barn. I put a load of lighting in that I get for favours off mates, and I do lights on my birthday. That is what I do. That is what I love. And my girlfriend was like, you're literally doing your job on your birthday. I'm like, I love my job.
And there's cider. Let's be honest.
Cider, I do cider
absolutely. It'd be nice if we could all have a cider now, wouldn't it, together?
I've got one in the other room.
Oh, well, there you go. Feel free to grab it if you... So look, 2020, I mean, we thought... Yeah, sorry, guys, to do this, but, where would we all have been now? Scotty, let's go with you, mate. Did you have what would have been a typical week for you pre-pandemic?
I don't know. I've been sort of just doing... I decided to stop touring a few years ago,
right?
Which is when I did my engineering degree. Like, none of my degrees I did before I started working.
Yeah. They've
all been afterwards because I thought they were interesting and I could study flexibly around the industry. It would vary. Like, I would sort of do it by month rather than week. I would work anywhere from 16 to, say, 20 days a month. And that might be a week-long job doing something and then a couple of days off. And then I might have a 1 day and then nothing for a couple of days and another 1 day and then a 4 or 5 day job.
Yeah.
And that might be in London, it might be up and down the country. Like, even though I don't tour anymore, it might have been going to Paris for 4 days to install something, or Germany, or Sweden, or Italy. These are all places that I've gone for random little jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And no, there's sort of still no security, but you know, after 20 years, I've never run out of work for more than a couple of weeks.
Mm.
Yeah. And even if it's a quiet couple of weeks, you phone up everybody and go, "Oh, I'm having a quiet couple of weeks," and they go, "It's all right. We're all having a quiet couple of weeks."
Yeah.
But there's like 8 jobs coming up next week. You're like, "Oh, okay, that's fine."
Yeah, it's going to be okay, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas now there's no. I've spoken to some of the supply companies in various ways. Some of them I've just phoned up just to say hi and just see how they were doing as well, because we're all at home.
Yeah.
And these are big companies who are constantly busy and employ hundreds of people, and they're all going, the phone hasn't rung in 4 months at all. You know, not even a little inquiry. The phone has not rung. The company is not doing anything. You know, and they are having to look at, all of the supply companies are having to look at redundancies and letting go of their staff. And some of those people, like, if you're not a freelancer, you're a full-timer. It's about a quarter of the industry, and people are tend to be very much one or the other, I find. But if you're a full-timer at one of those companies, there's a good chance you've been there 10 or 20 years, maybe 30 in some cases, and now that company is having to look at if they let you go. And not because you've done something wrong, not because you were bad at your job, simply because they have no work and they don't know when the work will be there, and they don't have a choice. And yeah, we were talking about, you know, if you do a socially distanced audience, well, let's say you can. Let's say we could suddenly do a show at a third capacity.
Yeah.
Okay, well, either you charge 3 times as much for the tickets, which I don't see really going down very well, or you go, okay, cool, so we have a third of the money. So we'll have a third of the cast, and we'll have a third of the technicians on the show, and we'll have a third of the lights, and we'll have a third of the scenery. Yeah, okay, cool. Now that lighting hire company is only hiring out a third of the stock that they would, so they only need a third of their staff, and that scenery company is only making a third of the scenery that they would, so they're only employing a third of the carpenters. They're also only buying a third of the materials and the paint and the wood and the glue, so all those suppliers are only making a third as much. So even if you open up the industry in a socially distanced way, you're making 2/3 of it unemployed.
Yeah.
All through the supply chain.
Yeah. That's not mosh pit day.
No,
right?
No. I'll tell you what, that's really, really well explained. Thank you for taking us through that, because that really does put it into perspective, doesn't it?
Even if you open up, 2/3 of us are unemployed. And I've had people say, oh, well, I have an engineering degree. They're like, oh, we'll go and get a job in another industry. And I'm like, I don't know anything about trains.
Yeah.
I have spent years working on choo-choos. I was working in theatres. I'm very, very skilled at this.
Yeah.
And even if I could cross over into, say, construction rigging, right? Playing with cranes. I've toured stages. I quite like cranes. They're fun.
Yeah.
Right. Even if I could transfer some of those skills, I don't see, they already have people. It's not like there's a construction boom going on at the moment and they're clamoring out for people. That's closing down as well. Every other industry is also making people redundant. They don't have an overflow of jobs for us to go and pick up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, someone said the same thing to me, Scotty, because I run, I do 3D drawing as well and do
cool.
technical drawing services and design of stages for people and that sort of stuff. And someone's like, well, you can use CAD, can't you? I'm like, sort of, yeah. And they're like, well, can you get a job doing CAD? I'm like, doing what? Like, I'm not a structural engineer, I'm a civil engineer. Like, why did you put the drain there, John? Don't know, it was in the middle and it looked pretty. I'm not an engineer. I put it in the middle because it was symmetrical and it looked really nice.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's on top of a hill, no water's going to flow into it. You're fired. I'm like, nice one. Cheers for the chance.
Yeah,
like, it's not going to happen or work that way.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's not how any of that works at all.
And Frank, just thank you so much, Scotty. That really, it's made me laugh, obviously, but it does make you think, doesn't it? Christ, it makes you think. Frank, you said you were on was it James Blake?
Yes.
So he is some talent, that guy, isn't he? So this was where you would have been now, or pre-pandemic. That was your last kind of. Or you doing a few, were you?
We were due to go to do Lollapalooza in South America on the 23rd of March.
Right.
And that got pulled quite late because it was the usual. Because it was South America, I was chasing stuff, but there's no surprise there. That's the usual. It's about a week to go and I'm still not sure I'm going, but that's the usual. But it had gone really quiet and it was like, myself and the tour manager were going, this is not happening, we know. So that went, that was the 23rd of March. That should have been 2 weeks touring through there. Then I was actually going to start a campaign doing monitors with Paul Weller. So that was going to run from May all the way through till end of November this year, with rehearsals running through April. And that has all been postponed until, as we all keep saying, March 2021. We've actually got dates booked in and confirmed. If I'm being totally honest, I can't see how we're all going to get on a tour bus and go and start travelling through Europe.
It's those.
It's like you know, it's like Scott was saying earlier. He's so right. It's everything. It's like, for me, how do we unload a truck? How do we get around flight cases? You know, so the trucking costs will go up because it'll be a flat pack and everything will have to be on wheels and use forks.
Yeah.
How do you fly PA? How do you have consoles where no one else can go on top of them, disinfecting mics, let alone letting punters into a venue? You know, it's all those, and that's just in our areas, in, you know, the kind of technical area, security, toilets, catering. How do we go into catering? So, yeah, everything's been moved. I've got dates starting from March 2021 and everything's rescheduled and booked. But and I'm not being pessimistic, but I'm just looking at it going, I just can't see how I don't think the switch is just going to go back on in a few months.
Yeah.
There's going to be, and I think that's just something as an industry we need to look at, is we're going to go back, but we need to adapt and not just expect it all to be as it was. And I think that's an important thing to try and plan, so we can actually keep going until things can be, however long that's going to be, but actually be able to adapt, to adjust to how we're going to have to run it for now. Because I don't think it's going to be back to normal in 6 months or in 12 months.
No. I have to agree.
And especially, like, a friend of mine, the company he works for, were talking about doing a tour to the Southern Hemisphere in the new year because we are open. I'm like, well, that's a cool idea. But first of all, you've got to remember, it takes a long time to get there. It's expensive to ship stuff to Australia and New Zealand. And even if you do, you go, okay, cool. That's an open industry. We can go there. You can have a big gathering. You can have an audience, all that. The only reason New Zealand, for example, can do that is because they are quarantining people at the border for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you can take your tour down there, you have to pay, like, either your crew is going to sit there for 2 weeks in quarantine. Now, either you don't pay them, in which case I wouldn't go on the tour to sit in a hotel for free for 2 weeks, or you've just increased your tour cost by 2 weeks' wages, but you're not adding 2 weeks gigs.
Yeah.
So either you go to where the markets are and it costs you twice as much for the same revenue, or what do you do? Like, if you're loading a truck, I spent a lot of time loading trucks when I was younger.
Yeah.
If you're, as Fran was saying, if you're stacking cases, you wheel the case up and there's 4 people around that case to stack it on top of the next one. And you are shoulder to shoulder. 4 people in the back of the truck all night stacking cases, breathing next to each other. Can't do that now. So you need twice as many trucks. That's literally how it will go. You will need twice as many trucks, twice as many drivers. I know I was doing a staging tour a few years ago, and they added some bits to the stage. And so we needed 1 more truck. We went from 12 trucks of steel to 13 trucks of steel on a 8-week tour. And that added 30,000 euros.
Well, there you go. That's
right?
it all,
By the
doesn't
time
it?
you've got the truck, the driver, the fuel, his wages, hotels, catering, 1 extra truck was 30,000 euros.
So in the short term, how if you are going to try and like tour to Australia or New Zealand, how are you going to compete with a local production company that goes, well, actually, we can give you this equipment and these skilled people at local prices, and get another quote off the British company if you want, but we're probably going to come in hundreds of thousands of dollars cheaper.
Great question.
It becomes a no-brainer at that point. We can't just expect you to pick up and take that work everywhere else. Because as good as you are, could be the best lampy, the best noise person, the best rigger in the entire world. It's not going to be worth the money still. They've got great technicians, all over the world.
Of course. Before I ask all of you guys, this is excellent, guys. This is really amazing stuff you're giving me here. I'm going to come on to We Make Events and this event on the 11th, and I'm going to come on also to what we need. It'd be nice if Boris was on this call, wouldn't it? Well, I don't know if it'd be very nice for him, but however, we'd have no, it wouldn't, would it, Scotty? I'd like Scotty to have a personal word with Boris. I reckon that would be interesting. So just, Laura, just want to check, I'm just going to ask you as well, Laura, where you would have been pre-pandemic before we get onto this whole, how do we get how do we get the government to listen to us? Yeah. Sorry. No, it's me, sorry.
Similar to Fran, to be honest. I was meant to be out with Mika all of this year. We were actually in Australia when we got the call to say, Asia's off. We were supposed to be traveling to China at the end of that week. We had South Korea in there, a couple of other shows, and we got told in Australia, you're all going home. But yeah, we were supposed to be out for the rest of the year, South America at the end of March, and then we would have been doing festivals at the moment all over France and Italy mainly, and then starting up again in September for touring.
Okay. Well, John, did I ask you where you? I know you told us some other stuff, but I don't think I asked where you'd be either.
I assume I had a little look on my phone at the calendar what I was doing the last 2 Augusts, and the last 2 Augusts were a mixture of festivals.
Festivals, of course.
Last year I was actually working for Adlib. I was front of house lights for Transmit Festival for Adlib, believe it or not, to bring it all. It all comes back to Andy Dock. It's
full circle with this guy, isn't it? Yeah.
He is a linchpin of the industry for a reason. But there you go. But I would be either running a front of house at a decent sized festival or be touring in with a band. Just looking back at the last few Augusts and aggregating the summers that I had, it's festival season. I'd be very busy. I'd take usually a little bit of time off in August to go up to Edinburgh for the Fringe because my girlfriend's a stage manager and she always goes up there, and it's just a lovely, nice time to take off and just see a different side of the industry and the culture and stuff. So that will be August. Obviously, none of that's happening.
No, of course. I mean, obviously, what is happening on the 11th is the We Make Events. Well, it's a big push, isn't it? If you guys, obviously, part of doing this is part of supporting this huge event that's happening. Do you guys have much involvement in it? Have you been chatting to Plaza and the other companies that are supporting this?
I was just going to say I'm actually involved with the one that's happening up in Manchester.
Oh, great.
We've got the one up in Manchester where we're going to be walking down Oxford. I mean, a lot of people have just come together, organisers from Manchester, spoken to the council. We've got road closures. We've got a COVID safety in place, full registration. And the people that have brought it together have done it in the last few days. Wow. And it's been amazing. I've been sort of getting some messages back from them, and we're all trying to just push the message out there to everybody. But that's going to be a walk, like a march down Oxford Road, starting at the Academy.
Yep.
and walking down to the main square in Manchester. So, yeah, I mean, obviously everything that happens is great, but that's quite new. And, you know, we're really pleased to see, you know, how many people are responding to that. And definitely, I mean, obviously I'm going to be there on that, as are a lot of my northern colleagues.
Yes,
you know.
yeah.
So really, really happy about that.
And there's one in London. Is there one in Liverpool as well?
Yeah, there is.
Yep.
Starting at the arena, same situation, sign up and COVID. Got to wear a mask.
Yeah. We got it.
You sure?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, and of course, are any of you guys going to be at the London one?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Because I've signed up to that. They've got
nice ones.
Lots of stuff in and around the river and the venues that are around the river. It's quite. I ended up getting embroiled in a weird sort of way in the last weekend. I actually did something a little bit better to ask forgiveness than permission. I took, like, there was about 10 of us that are involved with my union, Bec2, and we did some guerrilla projections on the Houses of Parliament with a bunch of stats that relate to. So I've been parroting out stats on this call because I know them because I've been reading the Google document for weeks.
Excellent.
So we got a team of like techs and locals, like 10 of us tops, got some projectors, turned up at 3:00 in the morning on the other side of the river and just threw a load of stats onto the side of it, filmed it, and then out of that, the We Make Events people said, we like that video. Can we use that video? I'm like, yes, you can use that video. I'm like, would you like to be involved? I'm like, why not? Because the problem is, if you give us loads of time, even if we're skint, if you give us loads of time and nothing to do, we're going to get up to stuff. We're resourceful, agile, smart, innovative, brilliant people in this industry. We can make... I had a ragtag group of 10 people and a knackered old projector and a MacBook and a generator. And I did that over the weekend.
Extend the furlough scheme for specific industries that still need it, because we can't all go back to work. It's not a one size fits all. The same for the grants for the self-employed. Make them more flexible so it includes everybody and people aren't excluded. As I was saying, I don't think this will happen. Personally, I think a universal basic income is a good idea. So there is something to get people through. And it's like I said, if we don't get through it, there'll be more people unemployed, more people having to claim, less people putting money into the economy. It's like a knock-on effect. It's better for them to look after us now so we can go back to work when it's viable.
Well, it really is, isn't it? John, anything to add there?
I agree with what Fran said, basically entirely. Like the basically there needs to be sustained, ongoing and substantial financial support for people in our position. If you look at it just cold on numbers, we're a great investment. We make so much money for this country, especially I think it was in 2018, possibly, that like music tourism alone brought like £4.5 billion worth of revenue to this country. Like, we make so much money, and this is before the artistic value and the actual cultural value that we add to this country, and which is a reason that people want to come here in the first place and want to come to places to Glastonbury and stuff like that. I think that I honestly think that there's so many cracks, there's so many edge cases to this, there's so many people who fall through the cracks on a spectrum from getting nothing to getting not enough, that it's what is here is not fit for purpose. If I have tools, like I call a car a tool, if I have my car or my business car or stuff that's a tool, and I have to sell it to pay my rent before mosh pit day, and then what is happening is that when it is time to go back to work, I'm then trying to re-enter the labour market with fewer tools than when I left for no fault of my own, and I'm less equipped to some of these things I might have to buy back.
It's a vicious circle, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and that's me as an individual.
Yeah,
I'm not a supply. Yeah. I'm not a lighting hire company or a PA hire company. If they have to sell stock and then they come in, they might be in a position where they can't tender for jobs that they know would have been able to tender for before the crisis, because they don't have the kit on the shelves because they've had to get rid of it. Not that anybody's buying lights at the moment anyway, but if you're putting us in a position where it's so financially precarious that we can't sustain ourselves and re-enter the market, and then keep our sector's economy grows faster than the UK's economy, and keep earning all that money and keep making, keep adding cultural cachet to the UK at a time when it really needs it. Because don't forget, we're not out of the woods yet. We've got Brexit to contend with at the end of the year before we even get through this.
Yep.
Good luck not being able to tour through all these European countries. Maybe, who knows? Nobody knows. So there's another roll of the dice that we've got to deal with as well. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be a long winter, guys.
So I can't actually apply for universal credit at the moment. Also, because my partner is getting money from the government for being self-employed. We can't get anything in the way of universal credit. So we need furlough to continue, really.
Yeah. And Scott, anything just to add? Or I know you're in agreement with everybody, but anything you'd like to add, mate?
Yeah, you need politicians to stop making empty platitudes. All right, Boris went on Twitter and said, "Oh, I'm looking forward to going to the theatre again as well." Like, well, then maybe you should do something to make sure there's a theatre for you to go to. Okay? Freelancers rely on suppliers to give us work. Suppliers rely on there being a pool of freelancers to do that work for them. That's how the industry works. It has to be that kind of flexible. We need specific support, and it has to be financial. Right? I can't pay my mortgage with words. And you have to have, I've applied for universal credit, and I went through the questions and went, these questions don't apply to me.
Yeah.
They don't make any sense for my situation. Mm-hmm. I haven't lost my job. My job has stopped existing. And I'm going to bring up New Zealand again because they did it well. When they did lockdown, they made money available to support people. They brought out a separate application form. It was not the normal unemployment form. It was a special form that said, my work has gone away because of coronavirus, and it was a separate fast-track system so that you could just deal with it, and it recognised that you weren't in a normal unemployed situation. Right? They're not phoning you up every 2 weeks to go, have you applied for any jobs? Like, oh, no, your industry's still shut. That's a bit shit. Have some more money. Go and buy groceries. And the support has to be enough for people to survive on, right? I managed to get a mortgage holiday, but that's ending. I'm not going to have enough money now, right? And if you give people enough money, right, as a country, we want to avoid a recession, right? That's a bad thing to have happen. Well, if you've got a bunch of people at home and they're scrimping and saving, they're not spending money on anything. Our economy is based on us all going out and spending money. If you give everyone enough money to actually survive on, then people are going to do stuff with it. Even if it's self-isolating stuff, even if we can't go to the theatre yet, you're going to go, oh, well, the kids are still having to do stuff from home, and because we've got enough money, we'll buy them an iPad, say, so that they can do that from home and not use my work laptop. Oh, look, now we're stimulating stuff again. Right? It has to be industry-specific, by industry, and it has to be enough money for people to actually live, not scrape an existence, and you have to support suppliers and the staff because we're all going hand in hand. If one half goes down, the other half is going down.
Yeah. Very, very well said, guys. Look, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I mean, the facts are harsh and outrageous, actually, aren't they? But it's been so great to hear insight from people that matter so much, and that you're given that kind of time, especially during this dreadful situation. I can only wish the absolute very best of luck of moving forwards, and that we can get, knock on these seemingly empty heads in some of the parts of government to see what we can actually do to help this. Thank you so much for being here. Huge thanks and best wishes. Lots of love, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you all.
Headliner Radio, the creative voice.